right, let's play some internet magic here.
Yay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Vertigo Table. I am very lucky and delighted to be joined by Diana Faye, Diana of the Rose, who is a Fae. We'll get down to that. I think you most likely are a Fae.
I'm about as close as you get, native Oregonian.
The Oregon, I mean, there are patches of the Feywild that are very northwestern, woodsy. Yeah, yeah. So tell the folks at home if they don't know already where they can find you on the internet and what you are doing. And I'm going to take a
Oh man.
seat here because you do a ton of things on the internet. You are
I
everywhere.
do. Yeah, this spiel never gets any easier, and every time I do it, I add like two or three new things to the resume. But I am, as mentioned, Diana of the Rose, Diana Faye. You can find me on all platforms as at Diana of the Rose. I was incredibly lucky to get my handle on absolutely everything without a fight, so it's been quite nice. But I do a lot of D&D content. I don't quite delve into long form as much. It's a lot of short form. So if you want like really condensed versions of how to be a better DM or how to be a better player, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts are going to be good for that. And then if you just want general advice, I actually do streams 3 times a week where I talk a lot about D&D, give advice to whoever's in chat and who has questions. And then that's as a Twitch partner. And then outside of all of that, I'm also a model, actual play performer, live play performer, panelist at conventions. The next one coming up is PAX Unplugged. And I am also a social media platform consultant every now and then. So
Mm.
I guarantee I'm missing something in there. I think there's more, but I
Well,
can't think of all
my
right
notes
to.
here say animal champion,
Yes!
which
I got a degree in it and everything.
yeah, so check it out. And it's not just because it's short form. I think short form kind of pushes things that direction, but you give like good, sound, punchy, like actionable advice.
Thanks.
When you can't wax poetic for 20 minutes about, internet drama,
Yeah.
you can get right down to like, hey, if you do this, it could make your game better. Try it. Here's how to try it.
Yeah. It's almost
In
like life hacks for D&D,
Yeah.
I try and so I have the secret to success that I always tell people is I have OCPD. It's obsessive compulsive personality disorder. And basically it means that everything I do has to be like made into some sort of procedure. Full on like to-do lists run my life. If there's not a procedure that exists for something that I do at my day job, I write it. And D&D is such a creative field and historically has been treated so creatively that people who are like really, type A type people, the people who play the game most often are people like engineers, gamers, people who are on the nerdy side, and they feel like sometimes they can't get into D&D as much because it's been shown to be super artistic and creative because of things like Critical Role and other series that have popularized it and made it seem really intensely like they make it seem like you have to basically write a full-on narrative for every single episode and, buckle down and do creative work. And not everyone's capable of that. And that, me included, I can't do anything creative to save my life. So I tried to take what those really cool, really creative shows are doing and make it into some sort of procedure and then spit it out in 60 seconds or less for the internet. And so it just ends up being a lot of really quick tips that are really effective, honestly.
I hate to disagree with you so early in our
Oh
conversation,
man, all
but
right, yeah, let's fight.
I need to push back on the idea that you just claim to be not creative, and I have seen your output, and that's that's not fair or nice. And what are the rest of us supposed to be doing if you're not creative? Come on.
I do my best. I'm still trying to boil down some parts of it, things like being able to look at a Pinterest board and come up with a character idea, looking at random objects and making it into narrative ideas for D&D and things like that. I'm trying my best to still pin it down to something, some sort of easily copyable lesson that I can teach people, but it's mostly improv exercises, I guess.
It's so interesting to me that you had like the lack of procedure is felt like a barrier to entry to you because it was
Mhm.
too like open-ended and
Yeah, a lot of times, especially early on in the game, because I started playing back almost a decade ago now when 5e first came out, I knew nothing about it.
mm,
And like I said, learned from Critical Role and things like that. And then my friends were like, okay, well, here's a YouTube video on how to fill out a character sheet. Just fill it out and then show up. And it's like, it's good to play. It makes a good game. But if you want to make a great game, there's things you can do. There's pretty easy like, formulas that you can use and apply to different character arcs. You can, I dropped like tidbits on how you can do foreshadowing in your game to really high success and really effective, to have really effective moments and things like that. And thankfully, the game's gotten a lot better from the writing side of it about
Mm.
it too, especially with the 2024 DMG. Oh my
Oh
God. Like
God.
I joked about them stealing my job. Legitimately, they have stolen my job. I don't know what to make videos on anymore because the DMG now gives you all of this really good advice that's like really simple and easy to implement. And I'm like, well, what do I do now?
I
Um,
have been uncomfortable about admitting that out loud, but yeah, that's a factor here. What are we going to talk about if you guys fixed all this stuff?
I know, right? What am I gonna? I'm gonna come become one of those clickbait YouTube channels that just
Oh,
talks
yeah.
about a new controversy every single week. You guys know the one.
They fired somebody. Did you hear? I'm sorry. God. Okay. Seven things there to unpack, but I have seen your we've all seen your Dungeon Master screen,
Oh
which I
yeah,
don't know if that's even a dungeon ma like do you set that up? I understand it's too big to fit on the table is the
it
point of
is the
the
Dungeon Master's wall.
but yeah, it's the Great Wall of Dungeon Mastering. It's incredible.
You can see it from space, they say. I used to use it a lot more, and so what's on the inside? If for those who hadn't seen it, there was a very famous video where I unfurled my DM screen and it was taller than I was. There was a follow-up video showing off what was on the inside, and it was a lot of reference tables that I got off of Reddit and things like that, which were really helpful early on in my career. But nowadays, I just use the DM screen for really two things, and only when I play in person. I don't use it at all when I'm playing virtually anymore. I did used to, but it has a clock on the inside, like a proper like clock face that shows 24 hours worth of segments on it, and then little clock hands that I can move around to help me keep track of what time of day it is and passage as my party goes through and does things. And then I also just use there's like plastic slots where I can slide information in and out. That's not just a pasted down quick reference sheet, but I can slide in, the results of the Taraka deck reading that my party did in Curse of Strahd, or the inventory of the shop that they're about to go encounter. So that's really the modularity of it ended up being the most useful part. And I use that sometimes, but again, only ever in person. And it now needs to be overhauled because of the 2024 rules and things like that. So might remake it down the road, resurrect
Everything
the
is everything
nice
is different
details.
now, but not different enough that you realize. It's like you trust your
Yeah.
instincts and then you're wrong. So like, yeah, I've been looking up everything now. It's just like I know how that used to work, and I don't think they changed it, but I don't trust myself right now.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sure someone's done a video of like the full-on one-to-one, like this is what they changed, this is what stayed the same, sort of like breakdown. But if they have, it's probably like a 70-minute video.
It's yeah, there's a lot of those videos, but it's not enough to it's too much to just like ingest at once, at least for the way my brain works.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean we're already talking plenty of D&D goodness. I might steal that clock idea. That's really good. But
I highly recommend it.
let's roll some dice. Roll a D20 for me and let's get
Oh
some
man,
questions going.
sweet. Let's see. 18. That was better than that's rolled all week for me. God,
18, rolling hot out the gate.
I wonder if
Um,
that's good here, or if that's bad.
there's there's a tonal shift, but
Oh,
there's not good or bad. There's no gotchas. But what is your top tip for managing a table of players, like including everybody sharing the spotlight? What kind of procedures do you employ?
just in general for like making
Just
sure
in
that everyone's
general.
having a good time. Um, I I usually break immersion as I need to make sure that everyone's having a good time. When it comes to things like managing the spotlight, for example, I might sit down with a player and be like, "Hey, this is your character arc right now. Have fun with it. Don't be afraid to take up space." And then talk to the other players, especially if they're kind of butting in on the spotlight a little bit, and be like, "Hey, this is this person's character arc right now. They're
Mm.
going to take up space for a little bit. Your turn is coming up soon." And also just making sure that there's open lines of communication is always going to be like communication fixes everything, you guys. And so making sure that my party can come to me privately or publicly with their needs. They can stop a session in the middle if they want to. They can DM me if they want to do something special, or if they want to queue up an action in the middle of someone else's monologue. Um, they can just like, if we're playing in person, they'll just raise their hand, and then I'll be like, okay, I see you. We'll get to you in a second. So that way no one has any missed opportunities to do anything. Um, yeah, I mean, those are like the really easy ones. I would say. I also do regular check-ins with my party, and
Mm.
this is something that I recommend people do. A lot of people talk about session zeros and like making sure that you have expectations laid out at the beginning of a session or of a campaign, but also doing regular check-ins, at the end of every story arc, at the end of defeating a big bad, having some big story moment. It's good to still pull people out of the game, sit them down, and have almost a session 1.5. I don't really know what you would call it at that rate, but just like a mid-campaign check-in that's like, hey, what were your expectations? Have they changed? Is there anything that you want your character's story to include that we haven't included yet? How are we doing on safety tools? Have any of those changed? Because those can change quite often, and the game and people in general, and a lot of lessons that we teach on how to use those don't really mention the fact that people can have new fears or phobias or sensitive touch points, or
Or
maybe they can
discover
get rid
them
of
during
theirs.
play.
Exactly. That happens a lot more than people realize as they sit in on a session and they're like, oh my God, I hate this. And then you have to manage that.
Good hate this
Um,
or bad hate this?
yeah, right. And so it's, yeah, one of those like mid-campaign check-ins always works as well. Plus, as the DM, what you can do is you can sit down with your players and ask them about their in-game relationships to every other player character. One thing
Mm.
I like to ask, and this is just useful, this is just like a little secret that I recommend every DM does, is you can ask every player, what is your relationship to everyone else in the party right now? What would make that better? And what would make that worse?
Mm.
And so that way, you as a DM, if you feel like you want to throw a wrench in things and have inter-party conflict, can occasionally just like pull at those strings. Or if you have two party members that need to have a reconciliation arc, or maybe they want to like start a romance or get over some blood feud, then you know what you need to do in order to make that happen. So, sorry, there's a truck outside.
You're good. Yeah, brilliant. One, communication is you said it's the easy answer and like it's the simple answer, but it's not necessarily easy all the time. And that's true for life. That's true for everybody all of the
It
time,
is.
really.
Yeah.
But
Even
yeah,
with
point.
like, oh, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, conflicts at the table too. Like, if you have two players who are fighting each other, or someone has an issue with the rule set that you're using, or like even above the table, anything that happens, I recommend treating it as, with communication, but also as if it's not you versus the player or
Mm,
a player versus a player. Instead, treat it as the two players or you and the player versus the problem. Try and be collaborative about it. Try and make sure that it's not personal and that I find that just helps come to a better conclusion for everyone at the end.
yeah, there's a third thing in this equation here, and it's the game, and we're trying to make it the best, or the relationship, and we're trying to make it the best it can be.
Exactly.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And I really like pointed questions. I'll do texts a lot because I it gives people like time to
Ooh.
think, and it's kind of like whatever between sessions too. I'll ask questions just like been a couple days. I want to make sure you're thinking about D&D, but
Yeah.
also it's good to have that information. But like the player themselves might not know that about the character until
Mhm.
you start to ask them, and now they're processing like, oh, okay, I do have relationships. It's not just me and the DM always. I have relationships with the other people at this table, and it's
Yeah.
one ball of energy going around between all of us.
Yeah. Which is fantastic for new players too. People are always like, how do I get my new players to role play and things like that? And it's like, ask them questions about themselves, not all at once. Don't have them fill out like an essay or make a short story if their in-game biography or whatever. But like those little things help a ton.
Yeah, huge. I love it. All right, roll another D20.
Oh man. Okay.
I might
This
make
one's
you
doing
answer
well.
all of these because that was really good.
I also talk really fast.
Oh, that's cool. I'm
uh,
from New York and from a long line of caffeinated people, so
hey,
I'm right there with you.
I got a 10.
10. What is your favorite house rule or a rule that you've stolen from somewhere else?
Oh, yeah. This is one that I can't remember if it has a source outside of me. I can't remember what it is anymore, but I make it so that, the trinket table?
Sure.
I toss that in the trash. I don't use
Oh,
it.
such a great idea and such poor execution.
Yeah, and like there's some weird stuff on there that I feel like breaks immersion for me. One of the objects is a full-on just a battery, and it's
A battery?
described. Yeah, there's a battery on there that is
Ooh, it's been
it's
a
like
long time since
just
I looked at that thing. At least I threw it
it's
out a long time.
but you can also get a pet mouse, which is fine. I would also say like if someone really wants a trinket from the trinket table, they can just have it, but like they don't need to choose. They don't want to. If they want to roll for it, they can. But if they want just like a little thing to have, they can have it. It's functionally like repurposed junk that they're supposed to bestow with some sort of greater purpose. What
Hmm.
I find easier instead is, especially for new players, I let them choose a non-combat oriented magic item that is of common rarity at the outset of the game. So that includes things like I'm pretty sure the Wand of Smiles is on there. And there's that staff that you can use, which functions as a quarter staff, but you can place objects around the head of it and the objects start rotating around it and floating in space. There's, an endless pot of coffee, things like that. Because they are really just cute and fun. And I find that players have a lot more of a fun time kind of shopping through the list of magic items as opposed to like the list of trinkets. And also, it can contribute to their backstory in a way. So, if you have a character who's a professor or who has like substance abuse problems, for example, maybe having that endless pot of coffee is something that is a little subtle hint as to their backstory. I had a character who was just full on a tourist that I played one time, and she had like a little collection of things that she took, picked up in her travels, and she put it on that little quarterstaff that had it, her
Mm.
collection floating around at all times. Um, it also provides really good roleplay opportunities because around the campfire, if the rest of your party doesn't know what you took for your common magic item, and all of a sudden you pull out this magic coffee pot that has endless coffee and you start like offering coffee to everyone, and especially people who've never had it before, then that sparks a conversation that sparks like oh, what does this object mean to you sort of thing. And it's something to talk about that doesn't start from just a pointed personal question, which is usually how I think a lot of parties kind of end up having to roleplay around the campfire.
So tell me
So
about your most traumatic moment from childhood.
yeah, where are your parents right now? So I always do free common magic items. I just don't do orbs of shielding or anything like that. If it has combat value, I tell people like, maybe try choosing something else because it's more about the flavor.
So we're playing Mothership right now on Wednesdays, and their trinket
Ooh,
table. I mean, I'm only a player, so I haven't gone through the whole thing, but like, woo, so
yeah.
good. I had a pamphlet about how androids were trying to take over the world, and there are androids in the party, right? So that said a lot about how my
Oh,
character was going to treat people. And that guy
that's cool.
died, and then I had a scientist who had pink fuzzy handcuffs. It's like, okay, I know a lot about this guy right out of the gate. Um, Perfect character driving. I think you're gonna like the second half of this
Oh, hell yeah.
game show. Cool. All right. I love it. Roll me another d20.
Sweet. 15.
15.
Good spread so far.
Keeping it up top. Ooh, I like this one. Name a moment that would be on your TTRPG highlight reel.
Oh gosh. As a DM or as a player? Or as both?
I'll take one of each if it's too hard to decide, but
Oh man. As a As a DM, I ran Curse of Strahd. It was a long time ago, and I've heavily modified it to switch out the monsters with things that are actually scary. Because Curse of Strahd is like a gothic horror, but it's kind of like a joke gothic horror at this point. It's not
it's all a
scary.
little Victorian.
It is. It's
Been
like,
done.
oh, vampires, and then also, oh, look, spooky dead child, and it's like, this is it. This this dead 9-year-old is the best we got.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I will say spooky little children are my horror movie trope that I hate the most. It's like,
really.
yeah, that fucks with me. There's always like that little girl that's standing there, like, nope, I'm out, I'm done. It's good.
Mhm.
Thank
Oh,
you.
that's easy to toy with then. Sorry, I run horror games for the most part, so I'm like, oh, good to know.
Oh no,
Um,
I'm vulnerable now. So oops. Sorry.
uh, but the descriptions that I do for the modified monsters go a lot more into body horror.
Hmm.
And at one point, my party reached the bottom of Death House. They got into the basement, and there's a boss creature there that, as written, is supposed to be a shambling mound. Mind you, shambling mounds are CR5. The party's CR2. So most people replace that already, but I replaced it with a flying horror from the Ravnica module. Um, and then I reskinned it a little bit. I made it a lot gorier. I made it so it had this large gash going down its stomach. You could see just like a waterfall of blood and viscera and shards of bone sticking out of its innards. The like lining of that gash was covered in wriggling fingers that reached out towards party members if they were prone and it was standing over them. It had like no hair, horrific looking like teeth with no lips that like reached all the way. Its smile reached towards its ears. It didn't have eyes. It just had a thin flap of skin that covered both of its empty eye sockets. Things like that, right? And it was
Just things like that.
just
Just
casual little
horrifying things like
like
that.
my Pinterest boards are wild. Um, and I was focused on reading the description that I had written for this creature when they got to this area of the dungeon, and then I looked up, and everyone's faces were just like mouth open, like horrified at the specific description I had given in game. I got told later on that they would be having nightmares about it later, and I was like, all right, I could retire.
I have done my job.
I'm good.
Success.
Um,
I'm just gonna circle back to the Diana's not creative thing, and again put a pin in that.
but I
Well,
made
okay, so
rules for that sort of stuff too.
what's the player highlight?
Oh man, that one's a little bit harder. I tend to
Okay,
treat my player characters as the same with the same amount of care that I do when I'm on the GM side of things, to the point that I have every character has a Spotify, playlist, a Pinterest board, a full character
people sleep. I'm
description.
a theme song. I won't do like a playlist, but like people sleep on the importance of like
Yeah.
having some music to like set the vibe. Like I know this is what either what I'm thinking of when I'm running this thing, or like this is what this person hears in their head when they're like experiencing life. Like that tells you a lot about something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
cannot recommend that enough because it's like you listen to it a quick time through before you sit down for your session while everyone's gathering their dice, and it's just like, oh, it gets you in the mood. But the this particular character that I had one time, she was a super happy-go-lucky cleric, like or no, paladin rather, and she was super just an absolute ray of sunshine. She skipped instead of walking everywhere. She
Mm.
was um just like, had these two braids of white hair. She was super smiley, absolutely just treated everything with the reckless abandon of someone who has never known evil. And then she turned out to be evil because the god that she worshipped was a blood god, a god of murder and things like that. And she had come from a cult, escaped a cult, mind you, that had done a lot of, human sacrifices in her lifetime. She grew up around all that. And she left the cult, but she only left it for political reasons. She still worshipped the same god. And I didn't let any of the party know that. She had all this blood magic. Like all of her magic was reflavored to look like blood,
Mm.
or really spooky, visceral type things. Her magic, uh, or her spiritual weapon was, mild trigger warning for self-harm here. She would like slice open a part of her body, and her own like blood would weave its way out and form itself into like a spear or a sword or something like that. She would like pull people apart psychically and like expose their organs and things like that. You can tell I'm a horror DM. And she kept it hidden because almost every time that we entered combat, I tried my best to not use those spells until things got dire. And then when I used them, it like ended the combat within one or two turns. And then she would just kind of stand up, like still smiling, covered in the gore of her enemies and things like that. And it made for some really good just reveals because no one asked her at any point what god she actually worshipped. They knew she was a paladin, but no one dug into it until they were like, oh God, maybe we should ask this character what her deal is. Um, so
Yeah,
it's
I
those little
love
reveals that are fun.
so many things about that. Um, yeah, everyone is so eager to like optimize. I'm gonna get the best spells. I'm a cleric, so I'm popping spiritual weapon and I'm gonna do spirit guardians like before combat even starts every time because it's the most efficient way to do things. It's like, no, save your nukes, make
Yeah.
them special. Like I mean, even if you're not playing with weird contrasts and dichotomies and trying to hide who your character is, like yeah, that all out moment is so much better when you hold on to it until you like need it, until it counts. And
Hmm.
especially if you're like, sacrificing a part of yourself to do it, be that a spell slot or you're literally the blood from your veins. Like, yeah,
Need
holding
more
on to
mic drop moments like that. It's so much fun.
that's awesome. Man, okay. We're hanging out afterwards. We're gonna play some D&D.
Hell yeah.
Roll a D20.
All right. Nat 20.
Nat 20.
As
There
if it
we
would be unnatural. I'm not adding anything. But still, it's just, you gotta say
Wait,
it. It
hold on.
comes with
What's
the
your modifier?
contract.
Um, wait, I guess it's charisma based, so you do pretty well. What is your best move, trick, or hack? What is your dungeon master superpower? I feel like this is almost unfair because
It is.
you've been laying out a lot for us already. But
Oh
going back to the well,
man.
what else you got on that giant dungeon master screen of procedural generation?
Ah, God, it is very hard to answer this. One thing that I will say that is a lot of fun, and this is just the first one that comes to mind. Again, my channel's full of these, so it's hard to pick. There is a D10,000 wild magic table on the internet somewhere. If you search up I think it's called like the Nexus Librum or something like that, some fancy Latin name. But if you search it up, it's just like a free PDF that you can find online. It's gone through a couple iterations, so the latest version should be available as a download. And it is a replacement of the Wild Magic Table that goes so wildly hard and also in some really weird directions. Um, I use it just because the standard wild magic tables get kind of boring and you kind of see the same things over and over again. And so if I have a wild magic sorcerer or wild magic caster in my party, I ask them if they're okay using the 10,000 table instead. And essentially what happens is instead of rolling, a D100, you roll a D10,000 using Google, and it will come up with some crazy things. Everything from like you suddenly gain an insane amount of gold, or the nearest monarch declares you as an enemy to the nation and starts a war against you. Everything from that to a nearby bridge just disappears, or like the nearest horse now has a blood vendetta against you.
That's
One of the
scary.
moons
That's scarier
disappears.
than you
Yeah,
think.
I would be terrified of that.
Horses can
um
throw down.
yeah. It does seem, since some of them are really intense, I do recommend that if a DM uses that they do the 10,000 roll as opposed to the party member doing it. You can go either way, but that way if it comes up with something really crazy that would be game breaking, because some of them are game breaking, you can downplay it a little bit, shorten the duration of the effect, or just skip it and roll again. It's totally up to you. Don't break your game on, you know, just for the sake of the bit when using this table, but
Or you could,
or
but you
cool, you
could.
could. I'm not gonna stop you. It's a lot of fun. I had one in one of my players in my Curse of Strahd game. Same one, was a wild magic sorceress, and she rolled very thematically appropriately, where she cast a spell, and then the result from the 10,000 table is that she started vomiting up viscera and like bits of gore and things like that, functionally an entire human body's worth over the course of the next 5 minutes. And all the other party members were like coming over. The artificer, who was like a potion maker, was like trying to give her the potion equivalent of ginger ale and like rubbing her back and things like that. And like, it was, the description of that was fun. But
Incredible. I will add my own little dungeon master tip on top of that. You can just like have magic items that are wild magic. You don't have to wait for somebody to roll up a wild magic barbarian or a wild magic sorcerer. You can just be like, "Yep, this thing's pretty weird. It's on the fritz. Some gnome made it 1,000 years ago, and sometimes it works, and sometimes we're gonna roll a D10,000." Like, yeah.
I love that. Why have I never thought of that before? I don't know. Like, yeah, you can absolutely do that. Or like wild magic areas, zones that just like
Oh,
mess with
yes.
normal
It's been a
magic.
long time, but I did that. Yeah, just like and like the spell slot is your, because it's like, oh, shit, how do I do it? Yeah, it's like a check to see if it triggers wild magic. And it's like, so if you get a one on a d20, it triggers wild magic, but it's multiplied by how many, like what the spell slot is. So cantrips are safe. It's a level
Mhm.
one, you roll one d20. If it's a level three spell, okay, now we got three at bats to have a surge. Like
Interesting.
escalates, yeah. So it's like I like that, like kind of push your luck, devil's bargain kind of feel to things sometimes.
Yeah, I wish more people would play with wild magic, honestly. I feel like people kind of avoid it, which is not unreasonable. A lot of people do them for like one shots and things like that.
Yeah.
But even then, if you do wild magic, as part of a one shot, only being able to have it surge on like a one for a d20 kind of sucks. I play it especially for one shots and short campaigns so that it like builds in a similar way to what you said, but instead of being based off the spell slot, it's just like, oh, if you didn't do a surge this time, you didn't roll a one on your d20, then the next time it's either a one or a two. And if you
Mm.
still don't make it, then the next time it's one, two, or three. And so it just kind of like builds pressure almost. I don't recommend that for normal campaigns all the time, though. I mean, it depends on, it could get a little overwhelming, but
You have to ask yourself if you're willing to let your world burn down.
yeah,
And
you only have
that's the
so many moons
first.
that could just disappear out of the sky randomly if you use the 10,000 table. So
I'm almost more intimidated in the one shot, like burning the world down, because it's like I have 3 hours of material. Like I can start a new one shot, but there's no, if I burn the world down and I've been running the world for a minute, like okay, I know what the consequences are going to be. But on one shot, it's like I don't know. I run it much like tighter. Maybe that's
that
a
makes
me
sense,
thing.
especially if everything's canon.
Yeah, everything and nothing is canon as far as I'm concerned. Come at me, nerds. Roll, roll, roll a d20.
Alrighty. I'm surprised I've gotten no duplicates yet. That was a two.
Two. What is your least favorite aspect of running games?
Oh man. Hmm. I don't like the I used to say the economy part of it.
Ah,
I am god awful at determining values for things, and the 2014 DMG was of absolutely no
That's
help.
a system problem, not a you problem. Yeah.
Yeah, but it made it so hard, and like the value of magic items was just horrific. I ended up
Hmm.
hand waving it so that, depending on rarity, was just some chunk amount, and then I varied it up or down extremely slightly based off of vibe. And I don't like not having formulas and tables for things like that.
Mm,
And so
sure.
it killed my soul a little bit when I had to do commerce in game. And so I imagine that's got to be at least part of the reason subconsciously I run Curse of Strahd primarily is because there's, Barovia has like what, 3 shops. And so I was like, well, you can't have commerce if you don't have shops. Problem
Yeah,
solved.
it's either post scarcity or poverty. There's no like middle,
Yeah,
like we want a functional economy in a D&D world. I can't make it work. Nope.
basically. But I hear they fixed it in the new version. I haven't looked at those pages yet. I got to make a video on it to force myself to learn that.
It's still category. They made it better. To be fair, they've made it better. It's not broad swaths of like this is between 500 and 5,000. Now it's like a number based on
Oh.
rarity, which is better, but I would still prefer a little more specificity because like not all uncommon magic items are created the same. Not all rare magic items should be the same price, but it's
Yeah.
an improvement. It asks less of the dungeon master. Let's put it that way.
Right. And I'm
Uh,
honestly surprised that like third-party supplements haven't started doing that on their own prior to the 2024 DMG because I have, all of the Griffin's Saddlebag books. Shout out to Griff, by the way, amazing human being.
hmm.
And like it's kind of the same thing. There's not a whole lot of guidance on economy. There's a little bit more, but not a ton. And so I don't know, but that's just a me thing where I'm like, I need structure to a degree that I think most people don't usually need. And of course, from the writing side, they want to make sure that there's flexibility, so it's hard to codify everything. But eh, I hate numbers. So
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm gonna go off script here. How do you handle like travel? Have you built your own system for? Like, because like there's so many parts of D&D where like combat is so rigorous and concrete and like 6 second chunks and very mathematical, and then like a lot of it's very hand wavy. It's a crunchy system compared to a lot of systems, but like there's aspects that are like you have to pay attention to this exactly the right amount and not too much, or else it's kind of gets fuzzy. So like, are there other? Do you just give up on economy, or do you like fix it for yourself and like have like a price list?
I set aside price lists ahead of time. I sit down and just like trudge through it. Same with travel and things like that. I will sit down and do all the random rollings beforehand, so that way I have it planned out and I have descriptions set aside, ahead of time, so that way I don't have to improv it. But other than that, I do travel times and things like that pretty much by the books. And yeah, it's mostly just replacing my frustration and with bulk forcing it, working through it the hard way. Um, that's pretty
You
much all
do
I
have an
got.
awesome. Was it on TikTok? I don't know. You are everywhere, but there's a great piece of content about the I don't know, just the conversation around the table of like, wait a minute, I can buy 800 pigs. What
Oh
can we
yeah.
like? We can clear this. If I have 800 goats, like if I can like just release a barnyard's worth of creatures into this dungeon, like will that trigger all the traps? Like
Yes.
why is the telescope 1,000 gold pieces? Like
Oh God, that was wild. Honestly, someone was in my comments talking about just letting a couple goats in through a dungeon, and I'm like, yeah, you can do that. The god of goats is not going to be super happy with you. Like, there's going to be some issue down the
Ooh,
road if you try and start cheesing things. But
that's a
you
good
know,
move. My move is like I'm going to make you love these chickens before you kill them. Like
oh
I'm going to make you think
yeah,
twice before you throw them in the pit trap.
it's that
Um,
good realism. It's like,
yeah.
yeah, like you can cheese it if you really, really want to, but do you really want to?
Right. Are we up here trying to like speed run this thing? Like you're missing the point of the
Yeah,
game, guys.
exactly.
Okay, give me another D20.
Sweet.
Please and thank you.
This one was a 19. I think we did 19, right?
19. Ooh, oh no, we didn't. So if you roll doubles, we get the lightning round.
Oh my God.
Um,
Okay. This is
What's
terrifying.
your concept for your next campaign or game, even if, or maybe especially if it might never happen?
Man, this is where I kind of falter when it comes to being a DM because I only ever run modules or one shots or things like that that are pre-written for me. But there is a really wonderful supplement, Nightfell by Mana Project Studio. It's like this Italian company. This isn't sponsored. I just love them to death because they are genuinely really wonderful people. And they put out a like canthropy based like bestiary, a lot more mature stuff comes out of that studio. The type of stuff that I can't make videos on all the time because the
Mm,
artwork is so intense and like has like nudity and gore that I can't show off on camera, which sucks because I love them so much. And that sort of mature game style and gameplay is really what I want to hit with my D&D games because I'm playing with adults. I'm an adult now, and people don't always want to do the whole like dragons and fairies and fey creatures and like, dungeon crawling, things like that. Sometimes they want to deal with like the horrors of the human mind, and it's why everyone likes Black Mirror so much. It's one of my favorite shows. So
mm.
taking things and making it extra horrific on a mature scale is a lot of fun. And this studio came out with Nightfell, which, like I said, is a lycanthropy-based supplement that it has a campaign that goes from 1 to 19, which I would kill to have a full 1 to 19 like campaign. Oh my God, that would be so much fun. It'd be an insane amount of prep work. Mostly because I take an extremely long time to prepare modules as is. I always have to overhaul the descriptions of all the rooms. I read through them like 17 different times, change out all the monsters, make them extra gory, extra scary, work in player integrations. So like I don't really run games very often because of all the prep work that it takes, but since it's already boosted with all the mature sort of like horror stuff that I would add in anyway, and since it's such a small studio that no one's played it before, so I don't have to modify it to make it feel fresh for players who have seen it before, because no one's seen it before as far as I'm aware, no one I play with. It'd be a lot easier for me to run. And yeah, just being able to do that level of power scaling, and I don't know, I think it'd be cool. I'd be excited to play it.
I mean, you have my interest. I haven't heard of that one, and it's hard to stump me. But
Oh
I
yeah.
will check it out. Say it one more time.
Well, the studio is called Mana Project Studio, and then the book itself, it's like a series of 3 books called Nightfell. The one I'm
Nightfall.
talking about is there's like a bestiary, there's like a core rule book for their world, and those two are really cool on their own as well. But the third book that they have in the series is called Children of the Moon, um, which is where you get into like lunar magic, and it has subclasses based off lycanthropy and stuff too. And so if people want to do new player options that work with the campaign a little bit better, they can, or they can just do vanilla stuff. It's so much fun. This really sounds like an ad. I swear to God, they're not paying me.
No, I am here for it. I'm always interested in new cool stuff. And yeah, I mean, as long as everyone's on the same page and you have buy-in, like, yeah, go
Yeah.
hard. Like, get fucking weird with it. Like, it's good. And
Oh,
lycanthropy is such a, I don't know, unsatisfying thing baseline fifth
oh
edition. Like
God.
I've judged
Yeah.
it up on my side a couple times for players, and like, oh, it's such a rich well that like I'm just like, oh, it's a curse, and you removed it. I'm like, okay. It's like, no, this should be like campaign defining.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
And the
love
whole
that.
thing where you just like lose player agency. It's like, oh, you're a lycanthrope. Sorry, did you think you would get to run around Skyrim style? No, I give me your character sheet. You have to start over now. It's like game over. And that's just not fun. That's where Grim Hollow really comes in and shines. Another
Mm.
supplement, also not paying me, but hey, Grim Hollow, if you're listening to this, love you guys. They do like transformations not just for werewolves but for vampires and to become a lich and things like that, which is like all that sort of stuff that DMs inevitably get asked
Yes.
since everyone wants to do some really messed up shit with their character at some point in the campaign. Every wizard wants to become a lich, and it's like you got to have answers to that somewhere. And vanilla 5e is not it.
Yeah.
So supplements
The
have done a
answer, the
really good
answer is
job with
usually
that.
like, well, you should be a dungeon master then if you want to run a lich. Like,
Yeah,
I
actually, that's
got
a very
you.
good answer.
Yeah.
I might steal that.
My secret agenda is trying to get everyone to be the dungeon master.
Oh, good.
Um,
Me too. We need
yeah,
more of them
just
in the
because
world.
it's the best, not because I want them to like run things for me, but because like it's secretly the best. You're always playing D&D. It's amazing.
Do you prefer being a DM to being a player?
Yes, to the point where like I am actively trying to be a player more often because it's good for perspective, honestly.
Interesting.
And like I'm a player so rarely because I prefer being a dungeon master, and also like nobody else wants to ever because they don't know the secret. I don't understand it. But yeah, I definitely because when you're the dungeon master, you see the game, you see all of the game. You're never not involved. Those like rare moments where you are not involved, where you're sitting back and like watching things happen, are actually the best. You're not waiting for your moment. You're like,
Shoveling down snacks while everyone's monologue, like doing these really intense character
well,
moments around the
I'm kind of
campfire.
always shoveling down snacks regardless of what's happening. But I need to fuel this thing runs hot. That's why all the hair's gone. Um, but yeah, it's the best. I mean, I take it you strike me as the forever DM sort.
I prefer
Well,
it,
that's not.
but
I
that's
know
just
you
a
are a
control
player though. I
issue
know
thing.
you've been in actual plays. I've seen you play games. You play games.
Yeah.
You're a player.
Allegedly, yeah. It's a lot more fun being a DM. Highly agree. And like I said before, even when I'm a player, I'm kind of a DM. Like I will full on have so much information about my character's backstory. I will have their real name, their fake name that they're actually, their legal name and then some pseudonym that they use and why they use that pseudonym, relationships, character arcs that I've pre-planned for my DM and I'm like, here you go, pick one. Don't tell me what it is, just choose. And then like potential likes, dislikes, flavor descriptions for every bit of magic in their repertoire. Full on, it's I it's a control thing. That's really just the only way to put it.
I had two. That was a roller coaster for me. I had two opposite responses to that of like, oh yeah, I would love that. And it's like I'm actually feeling a little overwhelmed here.
Yeah, yeah. And I tell my DMs too, I'm like, hey, I know I'm a lot. Pick and choose what you want. Like full on, I am guesting on a show that I can't reveal yet, even at the time of this releasing, but I the DM wanted me on to be functionally a DM PC for him. And he gave me like a couple sentences about the character, and he's like, all right, just like build it out and like show up for a session or two. We're like 6 sessions in with this character now,
Hmm.
and I'm so invested. I built out parts of her backstory that shouldn't exist. I've got so much information on her, and my DM is like, you didn't have to do all like you're just here for like a little bit. So
That
it's
you
overwhelming.
see, you see it on actual plays, I think, because of like the formatting of like, okay, this is a show, so we can have guest stars, but like, good God, do I love being the guest star PC. That's my favorite way of playing. Just like, hey, Dungeon Master, how can I serve this campaign? Right?
Mhm.
Like, what can I come in to like push the plot forward, maybe have a couple cool moments, go out in a blaze of glory or ride off into the sunset. Like, that is my favorite style of play, where you are like halfway to a DMPC or like a yeah, it's that's the best.
A
That's my
hundred
favorite.
percent. And like it's so well suited to people like you and me who are like DM mains. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do what I found. And this is kind of getting into the part of the
DM
conversation
main.
that's
How
gonna
have I? That's fucking hilarious. That's yeah. I've never heard that before. Somehow. Yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Us poor souls. Um,
No, it's the
and
best. It's the best. I don't
it's
under
so
like
fun, but it's so much. Guys, if you're listening to this, go. It's like when someone tells you to send a message to your mom telling her that you love her. Send a message to your DM and just say,
hmm.
"I'm sorry." Um,
If they've been listening
but
to us for however long, 40 minutes now, they are Dungeon Masters, so
oh,
they're in the club.
good. Yay, welcome in. Um, but there is a wrong way to do. I mean, you're kind of like deputized, right? But there's a wrong way to do it where you hop in as a guest player and then immediately you're derailing the main campaign or like kind of just getting in the way or causing strife in the party. And it's like, oh, well, it's what my character would do. And it's like, yeah, but that's not what you were brought on to do in someone else's production. And so and this is kind of getting into the side of the conversation that's more applicable to people like us, like content creators and TTRPG people who do it for a living. But there's there's right and wrong ways to do it, and I feel like DM mains make the best kind of deputy characters for things like that and doing it the right way.
Absolutely. But like even if it's not like an actual play thing, if you roll it, especially if you're doing like a guest spot or whatever on like at the local game store, but like if you're coming into a situation and you're like, I'm gonna fuck shit up, then like
Yeah.
roll up a new character, please.
Yeah.
Like, are you gonna do that in a very mature, interesting way that's fun for everybody? No? Cool. Next. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't
Mhm.
care if we're recording this for consumption or not. Don't be a dick. I don't know. That's pretty simple. All right, give me one more D20. We should finish, but
Sweet.
I'm having too much fun.
Let's see. A five.
Bye.
Imagine a one is just like, what's your social security number, your mother's maiden name?
No, we have very good OPSEC here. We can I'll give you one. You can vote fudge if you want.
Oh
But
man.
I do want you to answer number five here because it might be hard for you to answer. What is your
Oh no.
favorite world building detail? And that
Oh,
could be like specific, or that could be like the blank spot that you fill, or both.
anything to do with ecology, and the way that different creatures and monsters and like the general like activity within your world interacts with other creatures and monsters and other bits of activity.
Because
So,
that makes perfect sense. You're a zoologist, so you're like you're
yeah.
mapping out like food chains and figuring out who eats the poop and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, what is this creature doing in this dungeon? Like, why is it here? Are there others nearby? Is it like symbiotic or antagonistic to the other creatures in this dungeon? Because otherwise, everything feels like a chain of random encounters that are
Hmm.
just so disjointed from each other. And that's a problem that I find in some of these pre-written modules where nothing is linked to itself or to each other or to the players. And making sure that everything that exists in your world is part of a living, breathing system where there are downstream rippling effects for everything that you do, that everything has a reason for existing, that yeah, it gives your players more to latch onto. It makes it more realistic. And from a, you know, zoological perspective, given that that's my degree and everything like that, and I'm a very sciencey sort of rules following, crunchy oriented sort of person, that just I love that aspect of world building so much. And I try and guide people towards doing that more mostly out of my own selfish self-interest, but I want to see more of that in the world.
Yeah, I mean, Gonzo's all well and good when you go like whole hog. It's like, no, the wizard did it. Everything's madness. Like that can be fun, but
Yeah.
like it's that middle ground of like, oh, this thing doesn't have any sort of relationship to the guy who lives next door. Like in this,
Hmm.
they share a wall, man. It's like 10 steps down the hallway is this other thing that they don't have. There's no, what do they do all of the time when we're not here to kill them? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
that's that's something that that way madness lies to a degree. Like you can go too long for that and never quite finish. But yeah, I need the world to make sense. And if the world makes sense, the players can actually leverage that chain of rippling consequences. Like, yeah, that's the good stuff for me. I'm there. So do you have like a specific like food web? I don't know. Like is there an
Oh
ecology, a
man.
biome that you created that you're like particularly proud of?
I not yet because I don't usually have the time to sit down and like do full, ecological scale level things like that. But usually what I'll do is I'll take
That's
someone
probably that's
else's
probably a good
supplements.
thing. That's probably
It is
good.
such a good thing. I would disappear for 3 months. You guys would never see me again. At one point, I did think about doing a project where I would sit down and make an evolutionary tree of every D&D creature, including like supplemental third-party creatures and things like that. Talk about how doppelgangers are related to mimics, are related to like other things. And I I don't know what stopped me. I'm assuming just, my own desire to have a life. And so I never ended up doing it, but that's like the level that I would go to if I had unlimited free time and no social life. Um,
I would look at that. Nerds love taxonomy. Like, let's go.
I
Let's
know,
do it.
right?
Yeah.
I do want to see more creatures that mimic what we do in the real world. And I'm talking, usually, obviously in the real world, we just have beasts and things like that to work with. But, you can see it, those principles applied to monsters. So things, for example, like the concept of an invasive species. We don't have
Mhm.
that in D&D. Not necessarily. You have some aberrations running around, like, the owlbear, I think technically would be considered an invasive species, but like, why did they invade? What are they feeding off of? How did the world react when they first showed up? Like, where have they settled? Why have they settled there? Have they evolved since then? Like those sort of lingering questions that go unanswered. Same with things like parasitic species. Are there, obviously you can have beasts that are parasitic to each other in D&D the same way you do in real life, but maybe there are demonic parasites or devilish parasites or aberration type parasites that are parasites of other aberrations. And so kind of making it so that everything that has a certain class of creature, everything that's marked as a demon or a devil or an aberration or something like that isn't all friendly with every other creature with that tag is a lot of fun. And I feel like there needs to be more inter creature conflicts and relationships. It's not just PvE, but it should also be EV, I guess.
That I love that. Yeah, because there's so few. There's like, oh, sometimes these guys use these things as mounts. That's about like the level you get. But it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. This is a pastoral society that like is herding these things, and these are like the whatever. These are the sheep, and these are the sheepdogs,
Yeah.
and these are the weird insects that feed on the on the sheep. I
Mhm.
just had this flash of like that. Have you seen Cloverfield? I think it's
I
the original
have.
one.
I was just talking about Cloverfield the other day, actually.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah, I'm not a
That's
huge like
fair.
horror actiony. I'm an actiony guy, but I enjoyed it. I don't know how like it's considered in horror circles or whatever. But there's this moment where like there's this giant monster. They haven't showed you much of it, and like I interpreted them as like parasites or so I don't think it was babies, but like all these little things came off of the giant thing and are running through the subway tunnels or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is part of an ecosystem that I don't know, I don't understand anything about it, but like it's even more real and scary now that it
Oh,
has like
100%.
ticks or something on it. And they also want to eat me now.
I was on a different podcast earlier this week, actually, talking about mimics, and the host had mentioned that he did this thing with certain types of mimics where, you know how certain types of frogs will carry their spawn on their back or like in their skin and things? Is this like a really niche? So I
I
don't
mean,
know if
I'm
this
with
is
you,
like
but
common knowledge.
I'll
Anyway,
go deep. No, give me all your zoological fun facts. I read zoo books as a kid. I'm a kid from the 80s. Let's go.
oh hell yeah. Yeah, so there's this type of creature, and I'm pretty sure it's a frog. I could be wrong. It might also be some other sort of reptile that like carries its babies basically in little pockets in its skin, its eggs in little pockets in its
It's like
skin until they're
marsupials,
ready to
but
hatch.
gross. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, but slimy. And there was like the host was talking about that concept of being applied to mimics, where mimics that are shaped like treasure chests might host a whole horde of coin mimics. And as opposed to like lashing out and biting at adventurers that come nearby and try to like open the chest and then it, grows teeth, attacks them or whatever, the mimic might allow an adventurer or a raider or something like that to take the coins home with them as a means of spreading their spawn further into different parts of the world. And
Like
so those
bed
mimic
bugs or something.
coins, yeah, yeah, it's a cool concept.
So I will say it was on Delicious in Dungeons. I don't know if you saw that
That a
Netflix
thing?
series recently, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not pointing. I don't know if they came
Oh, I
to
haven't
it,
seen it.
if it was like a co-evolution or something. But in Delicious in Dungeons, they have
Hell yeah.
like these like false coin like scarab things,
Oh, kind of like the mummy.
kind of like the mummy. I mean, there's nothing's original,
Oh,
but there is this like it didn't get too ecological, but like in a treasure chest were these weird coin guys, and then there was a mimic over here, and it was like, are these related maybe?
oh,
And then they
cool.
cook everything. That the gist of the show is then they eat it. It's fun.
Okay, gotcha. I need to watch it. Everyone and their mother's been telling me to watch it. I've been seeing
It's
my friends
good.
do
It was like the
cosplays
seventh
for
D&D person was like, you gotta watch it. I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And it's like it's good. It's fun.
I
I don't know if I
haven't seen
finished
it.
it actually. Now that I'm talking about it, I don't know if I finished the series. But it's fun. It's cool. Recommend. B plus. Okay. Do you want to finish? You want to take a break, or do you want this number one? Because
Oh man.
I'll give you the nat one.
Let's do the nat one. Why not?
Your choice. All right. Um,
Oh man, now I'm worried.
No, again, it's not bad. It's just like the opposite end of the spectrum here. What aspect of running the game are you currently focused on? What do you have room to improve?
Oh man, I gotta admit my weaknesses. Shit. Uh,
You agreed.
I
I can edit this out if you want to, but
I find that I'm really, really bad at improvisation. Um, to a degree that I very famously actually usually take a shot of tequila or something like that before I start running sessions because otherwise I can't get out of my own head
Mm.
when it comes to voice acting, which no one ever has to voice act, by the way, if you're listening to this. It's not required, definitely not a thing. You do not have to do it, but I just prefer it because otherwise all my NPCs sound like a 24-year-old girl. And so I 25. 25. And
What's today? I never know.
I,
I don't know what year it is. So then I have to do
I
some
know,
math to
right?
figure out what my age is too.
There's pre-pandemic, there's post-pandemic. I feel like I've been 22 for 7 years now.
The before times.
The before to, um, but yeah, I really want to get better at improv. I thought about taking like little improvisational workshops or classes or things like that around town, but there's not a whole lot going on. So instead, I'll watch other people do it and try and pick up on what they're putting down and take have some lessons to take home because if there's not a rule for it, I just freeze. And so that's why I had such troubles with like economy and things like that that we mentioned beforehand. And it's something I really want to get better at. And until I do, I'm going to spend so much time trying to plan for every outcome in every session of the game that, of course, 90% of them get thrown away and never come to fruition. But it's just such a time suck. That's the major thing holding me back as a DM right now, I would
Yeah.
say.
Thank you for sharing that. I know I like trapped you into that.
No, I don't mind. It's relatable, I hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, I relate to it 1,000%. I got there through like anxiety more than like needing a system for everything. But yeah, I used to feel like I needed to be prepared for everything because I would freeze up and not know what to do. And I also used to drink before running D&D every time, which is good for the first half. That didn't serve me well in the second half usually.
No.
Um, but it's like it's a muscle, right? Like it's a thing that you do and you do poorly a little bit, and then you get better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
Um, and you can like, I think the secret is you can prepare to improvise. That's really what's up. Like that, like having the right kind of, I'm a big tables guy, but like having the right sort of
Oh
like
yeah.
tools in place where it's just like, okay, I don't know what's happening, and like, boom, the dice will tell me, and I will connect these dots, like, and it's going to take me 10 seconds, not 10 minutes,
Mhm.
and the players will contribute to this at the table as well. But yeah, it's scary if you haven't done it before. Same thing with voice acting. I know. I also want to add, you can be bad at voice acting. You don't have to be good
Yeah.
to voice act. I'm awful,
Yep.
and I will do it sometimes.
It's like, sorry, every NPC in this part of the world has a really terrible, like, Brooklyn accent. Don't know why. Just that's all I got up my sleeve. It's that in Southern. You get to flip a coin, and that's
It's
what you get.
regional. That's what people
Yeah.
sound like here. That's it. That's fine. All right. Thank you so much. This was literally a blast. I have no idea how long we've been
I
going.
don't either.
Um, But yeah, I appreciate you. Tell the fine folks at home, like what are you up to? What can you tell us is coming?
Oh man.
Anything, or what's coming up in the world of Diana?
Yeah, by the time this comes out, the next thing that will be coming up is PAX Unplugged over
Hmm,
in Philadelphia. I was trying to run a panel. It was waitlisted. From what I understand, PAX was only accepting 30 panels total this year,
hmm.
which was an interesting either choice or maybe there's construction going on in the building or whatever. Anyway, if that gets unwaitlisted, I will be running a panel on it's considered a GM masterclass, a
Hmm.
game masterclass, if you will. And so, me and a bunch of other content creators, hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm manifesting it, will be basically teaching you guys how to be better GMs live and in person. So, keep an eye out for that. If it doesn't come to fruition and I don't get off the wait list, then in that case, you will just see me wandering around. Please come say hello. I love it when people say hi.
Awesome, love
Um,
it. I may see you there.
yeah,
Um,
I hope so.
good stuff. All right, and if you don't, then it's their loss, and you should do it anyway, just like on the internet sometime with everybody. Because I would take a GM masterclass with you. You're awesome. Yeah, good
I
stuff.
almost want to write a book, honestly. But then the 2024 DMG came out and did my job for me, so I don't know, just read that.
There's holes. The shine will, it's new, and it's not, well, you have it. You're special. I don't have it yet, but it's it's
Oh,
um yeah, there's still plenty to talk about. We're not done.
good.
All right, thank you so much, everybody. Go check out Dan, links down below. There's a million other. I think I'll just do like Linktree because you are
That's probably for the best, yeah.
epic. Just a ton of awesome stuff, not just D&D. I mean, a lot of D&D stuff, but you're just, yeah, doing a ton
Just
of cool
vibing.
stuff out there.
I just shit
Um,
post, honestly. Just throw stuff
but
at a
you're good
wall,
at it.
see what sticks.
Again, thank you so much. Thanks
Thanks for
everybody
having me.
home. We'll see you next time. Till then, be kind, have fun. Bye.